Hi, Roy here, and welcome again to another edition of the Right Has Left podcast. I am your host, Roy Garden, and as we do in all these podcasts, we follow along on what's going on with the Trump administration and the Republican Party. And as is with every week, they just give us so much news to follow that, what are you going to do about it? My goodness gracious, we have gotten so much news this past week, and what I like to do is I tape these podcast on a Saturday morning because I try to get all the news just right up to the point to where it's late breaking. Of course, that includes news of just yesterday. So having said that, we need to go ahead and just get right into it. So here we go. A federal judge on a Friday temporarily blocked the Trump administration from swiftly deporting illegal migrants from the interior of the United States. Washington, D.C. Based District Judge Gia Cobb, whom you see right here. She's an appointee, of course, of the former President Joe Biden, argued that prioritizing speed over all else will inevitably lead to the government to erroneously remove people. The Trump administration had sought to expand the scope of the expedited removal process typically used to fast-track deportations for migrants apprehended within 14 days of entering the country and caught within 100 miles of the United States land border to use on migrants anywhere in the United States and in the country illegally for less than 2 years. Now, what's going on here is the U.S. District Judge Gia Cobb, she blocked the Trump administration from expanding the expedited removal of illegal immigrants. And the reason is that and this is her statement on her opinion, the court does not cast doubt on the constitutionality of the expedited removal statute, nor on its longstanding application at the border. Now, she wrote this in her 48-page opinion. It merely holds that in applying the statute to a huge group of people living in the interior of the country who have not previously been subject to expedited removal, the government must afford them due process. The procedures currently in place fall short, as she stated. So, again, and I've talked about this before, due process. With the step up of the ICE and U.S. Border Patrol basically arresting and detaining 3,000 migrants a day in this country, do you think that each and every one of them is getting a due process? Do you think each and every one of them are criminals that do not belong here in the United States when they are having birth certificates and U.S. driver's licenses? Now, I know that might be shading some places, but a lot of these people have committed no crime. They're just picking them up because they got brown skin and, some of them, in their opinion, don't belong here. So I give kudos to this judge for putting this in place because, this has to be looked at more closely. And I'm glad that she did this. Now, immigration agents, and I just told you about the 3,000 quota of arresting and detaining people. Well, look at this video. Immigration agents arrested 2 Mexican contractors helping to tackle a wildfire in Olympic National Forest in Washington. A supervisor who oversees the crew said this statement on Thursday. It was one of the first times federal immigration agents have been known to enter a fire zone to carry out President Donald Trump's mass deportation orders, a veteran firefighter said. Now, 2 work crews totaling 44 people were gathered at a staging site near Lake Cushman around 9 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday when federal agents appeared, crew boss David Diaz said. Now, they were only about a mile from the Bear Gulch fire line and planned to spend the day chopping lumber, Diaz also stated. The cause of the fire, which started July 6, is still under investigation. It has scorched over 9,000 acres and was 13% contained as all by Thursday evening, according to the incident commander team. So here we go. Again, this backs up Judge Diaz's statement and why I'm glad she did this. They are now going to fire lines and arresting people. And they arrested 2 Hispanic employees. Now, what's going on here is when you get large fires, it is not uncommon, and again, I grew up in Wyoming, I know about this, for, the government or the state or the National Forest Service, in this particular case, will hire third-party contractors to help with the fire line. In this particular case, this was a third-party contracting team that was on the site. 2 of them were Hispanic, and in the opinion of ICE, so they were illegally there. They went up and arrested them. But again, it just gets absolutely crazy that you kind of do this kind of stuff because I don't know. But, there's a point in time for everything. But to go up to a fire line now and say, the hell with your fire, we're going to arrest these people, and you find somebody else to put out your damn fires, that's basically Trump's attitude and the attitude of ICE. So there you go. And speaking of Donald Trump, in a letter sent Thursday to Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson, President Donald Trump said he would not be spending $4.9 billion in congressionally approved foreign aid, effectively cutting the budget without going through the legislative branch. The letter was posted Friday morning on the X account of the White House, Office of Management and Budget. Trump's move rests on a tool that was not used for nearly 50 years. Yeah, 50 years this tool was not used. And it's known as a rescission. A president submits a request to Congress to not spend approved funds towards the end of the fiscal year so that Congress can't act on the request of the 45-day time frame, and the money goes unspent as a result. The fiscal year draws to a close at the end of September. Now, such a move, if standardized by the White House, could effectively bypass Congress on key spending choices and potentially wrest some control over spending from the White House and the Senate. Again, this is another reason and another move by President Trump to have total control of the spending money. He wants to control the Federal Reserve. This is an authoritarian president, ladies and gentlemen. He wants to control everything in the government. He wants to be the final say. He wants to institute. Everything that goes on in the United States begins and stops with him. That's what he is trying to do. And that, folks, is scary stuff. It really, really is. Now, in other news, Kamala Harris' Secret Service protection has been suspended. Former vice presidents typically get federal government protection for 6 months after leaving office, but then President Joe Biden had extended protection for Harris until July of 2026. Trump's move to drop it, revealed Friday by a senior White House official, comes ahead of Harris's book tour on her memoir. Now, again, with things like this, I can see both sides of the coin here. Especially with vice presidents. He basically stopped her protection almost a year before it was supposed to be dropped. And again, this book tour probably has a lot to do with it. He doesn't like it. And with President Donald Trump, especially with Democrats, if he can do anything he can to muddy up anything, he will do it. And in this case, he does not like Kamala Harris. He's stated that even on campaigns. He embarrassed him with when they were doing their debate, and so he does this. And again, this is what Donald Trump does. If he can get away with it, he will do it. And if he has the power to do it, he will do it. And in this case, he basically told Kamala Harris, your Secret Service protection is over. And good luck with that. So she'll probably have to hire a private security firm during her tours. And, I don't care who you are, a past president or past vice president, there's always somebody out there that doesn't like you. And it's kind of sad that, her Secret Service protection had to, be taken away from. But again, the President of the United States has the authority to do that. So U.S. revokes also visas of Palestinian officials ahead of the UN General Assembly. The officials were part of the Palestinian Authority and Palestine Liberation Organization two groups that had been previously represented at the assembly. In a statement, the State Department said Friday that Rubio had also ordered that some Palestinian officials' visa applications also be denied. Again, I think Palestine has just as much right as Israel or anybody else to be represented at the United Nations. But since the United Nations is in New York and it's in the United States, Rubio has the authority to do this. And again, this is just him thumbing his nose at Palestine. And I've had previous videos on this. AIPAC, which is the lobbyist group of Israel, they have bought and paid for almost every member of Congress, both on the congressional side and on the Senate side, with thousands upon thousands of dollars. And this information is available on the website, Open Secret. You can see which each person who you've elected to office, you can see how much money they have taken from AIPAC, the Israel lobbying organization. They basically buy everybody's votes. It's no secret. If they will lobby on behalf of Israel, they'll put thousands of dollars in your pocket to do with whatever you want to do with. And and Marco Rubio is one of them, by the way. Just so you know that. Again, this stuff is crazy. To take away Palestinians' right at the United Nations is something that is nothing less than disgusting. Moving on, Jim O'Neill. He is going to be serving as the acting CDC director. Two administration officials said. O'Neill, who was the second in command at the Department of Health and Human Services, will supplement Susan Moran's, and we're all aware of Susan Moran's. She was one of the people that got removed, and there's still a big fight going on. Susan Moran's, she was a longtime government scientist whose firing left the agency reeling earlier this week, and a lot of people walked out of the CDC since Kennedy started getting rid of people under Trump's orders, and he supports whatever he wants to do. She she's still fighting this, by the way. She has hired attorneys, and she's still fighting this. But back to O'Neill. He is a former investment executive who also served as the Federal Health Department under President George W. Bush, so he is a Republican. He does not have, by the way, any medical background. And I'll be talking a little bit more about O'Neill later on in the podcast, but I just kind of wanted you to see who this guy was and see where this stuff is going. Now, the Trump administration also, in other news, tells states to change sex ed lessons or lose funding. The Department of Health and Human Services Week told 40 states to change parts of a sex education lessons that focuses on the LGBTQ plus issues. And if they don't comply, by God, in 60 days, they're going to lose federal money for the lessons. The money comes through the Personal Responsibility Education Program and is aimed at teaching homeless students, those in foster programs, minorities, and those in rural areas and places with high rates of teen pregnancy. The push to change the lessons is part of a broader effort to eliminate what Trump calls gender ideology. By God, get rid of that crap. But some states and laws that require teaching about LGBTQ plus Trump administrations will cancel those grants. And so there you go. This is going back again to everything that has to do with the LGBT community and minorities and the cancel culture. Trump just does not like it. So again, this is crazy. Since he's already dismantled the Department of Education, let's just go ahead and kill this stuff too. So this stuff is just sad, but I'm giving you the news so you can look at this. Now, shortly after President Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, the director of the intelligence agency, we're going to move on now with Tulsi Gabbard. Guess what she did? She abruptly ousted a CIA expert who had helped brief Trump's team in the lead up to the meeting, according to several people familiar with the episode, by naming the person in a memo last week announcing she was revoking the security clearances of several current and former intelligence officials. Gabbard has appeared to have identified one CIA officer and it is a female, we know that, who was operating undercover, according to a source with direct knowledge of the matter. Although the employee, who we're not going to name, and in most places she's not named anyway, has been publicly affiliated with the CIA in the past. She was undercover at the time, and Gabbard named her in an X post, those sources said. A person close to Gabbard disputes that the employee was undercover, citing past public affiliation with the agency. But traditionally, intelligence officers routinely, they get moved into different positions, according to Tulsi's spokesperson. They also argued that the decision to revoke this CIA employee security clearance had nothing to do with their work on issues related to Russia, and noted that the DNI planned to promote other intelligence officers with similar expertise. The director of national intelligence, Gabbard, directed the revocations to ensure individuals who have violated the trust placed with him by weaponizing, politicizing, manipulating, or leaking classified intelligence are no longer allowed to do so. But Tulsi just leaked national intelligence stuff, so is Trump going to get rid of her? Probably not. So, again, this is just the culture in the Trump administration. You get a lot of people who are in high-level positions who have absolutely zero experience in what they're doing, and this kind of crap happens. It's because they do not have any federal government training. So this is stuff like this. Now, her name was offered in a list of 37 current and former intelligence officers whose security clearances Gabbard probably revoked because she said they have abused the public trust. So this stuff just goes on and on and on, doesn't it? So, this is a case of do as I say, not as I do. So how many times has Gabbard, screwed up with government security stuff? How many times? And here she uses this clause, well, they violated the trust of the United States government and they violated secrets and stuff. What did she just do? But we won't go there, will we? Because Tulsi is one of Trump's little, people that when, again, as I've said this many times, when Trump says jump, she says how high. So I can't believe some of the stuff that goes on. Now, the Transportation Department on just yesterday also canceled a $679 million in federal funding for a dozen offshore wind projects. Trump does not like anything to do with wind or the environment. It's basically, bulldoze trees down, let's build great things and destroy Mother Nature, because all in the name of dollars and cents. So the move was, again, the latest attack by the Trump administration on the reeling U.S. offshore wind industry, and comes days after the administration abruptly halted construction last week of a nearly completed wind farm off the coast of Rhode Island and Connecticut. We can go offshore and drill for oil and destroy the environment that way, but if we want to use wind to perhaps generate electricity and usable energy, we can't do that, ladies and gentlemen. The hell no. So funding for the projects in 11 states was rescinded, including $435 million for a floating wind farm in Northern California and $47 million to boost an offshore wind project in Maryland that the Interior Department has pledged to cancel, because the Republican Party doesn't like to do anything that's good for the environment. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said that under Trump, we are prioritizing real infrastructure improvements over fantasy wind projects that cost much and offer little. So, again, this is what you get with things like this. I've had an earlier podcast where you've got the senator from Utah and a couple other people that want to start plowing down trees in a national forest and build hotels and things because the land is not being used. They want to do things like this in Wyoming, which is almost 90% owned by the federal government, in BLM, National Forest Service, and open lands, things like that. So this just goes along with that same philosophy in Project 2025. It's all about money and giving more to the rich and creating, real estate offerings and things like that. So this is what's so sad about this is getting rid of things that we as two people need. That is, when I say two people, I'm talking about the government and us as citizens. We need things that have something to do with things that will help the environment and us using less energy. The Trump administration does not believe that there's a crisis going on in the environment. They don't believe that at all. So they believe that our Earth is in perfect fine shape, and this is why no matter that the world is getting hotter, that the ice caps are melting, that we're having more storms, we're having more tornadoes, we're having more things going on in the environment. We're having flooding. That has nothing to do with the environment. That has nothing to do with the earth warming up, does it? No, of course not. All right, let's move on. Cashless bail is a system that allows people to be released from pre-trial detention without paying any money. Now, Trump, as you know, just recently had a press conference where he wants to do away with cashless bail. It's put in place there because a lot of people who come from lower income or any other, or even less than that, almost, poverty level, they don't have any way to bail out of jail if they get arrested because they don't have the cash. Trump wants to do away with that. If you get jailed and you don't have the cash, by God, your ass is going to sit there then. That's not my problem. So he wants to do away with that. The condition of release depends, of course, obviously on the severity of the crime, and meaning that individuals accused of certain low-level, nonviolent crimes have a higher chance of being released before trial. Our jails are getting full. Trump doesn't care about that. Let's just build more jails. And how we're going to do that? We're going to give it to third-party people who have a lot of money who can privately run jails and institutions. This is going on right now with our immigration status, as you know. Thousands of illegal immigrants, so-called illegal immigrants, are being detained and arrested, and our jails are overflowing. The government has told states that you have got to cooperate and jail these people that ICE is rounding up. So what are they doing? The jails are getting full, and of course Trump doing this now that cashless bail has to be revoked. People can't bail out. So again, this is all going back to white privilege. If you're a great person and you have money and you're doing well in society and you can contribute to the CEOs and the big corporations, good for you. But if you can't, we're going to find ways to get rid of you, and this is one way of doing it. Proponents of cashless bail argue that its counterpart, cash bail, is unjust, particularly to poor people, those who cannot afford bail themselves. So they have to resort to extraordinary private bail bond companies. Again, there's the catch. They got to go to bail bond companies. Bail bond companies make money, and that is called profits. Trump loves profits. He likes people who can make money off the less fortunate. Or if they can't pay bail, they have to stay in jail despite being convicted of any crime, no matter how low level it is. So, and moving on to that, President Donald Trump said at a cabinet meeting that he wants to institute the death penalty in Washington, D.C. for anyone who commits murder. He did not specifically say how he proposed to implement that punishment. Trump defends crime crackdown. I'm not a dictator, Donald Trump said at his recent cabinet meeting on Tuesday. He touted his record on crime amid his federal takeover of Washington, D.C. and threats to do the same in other major cities. Now, if you don't think that Donald Trump is getting into this dictator mindset, watch this clip.
Not that I don't have the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the president of the United States. If I think our country's in danger, and it is in danger in these cities, I can do it. But it would be nice if they'd call and they'd say, would you do it?
Now, Trump says that the line is that I'm a dictator, but I just stop crime. So a lot of people say, if that's the case, I'd rather be a dictator if that's what they call me. But I'm not a dictator. I just know how to stop crime. So, as you saw in that clip, he thinks he has the power to do whatever he wants to do, and that's basically what he's stating. Is I'm not really a dictator, but if you think I'm going to be a dictator, okay, call me a dictator. So he kind of there admits it. I stop crime, but the question is just how much crime is he really stopping, and how much is in his mind, made up because he doesn't think the police do their work. And especially police in blue states. They're not doing a thing. The police in red states and Republican-held states, they're doing a great job. But the police in, blue states, they're not doing a job. But again, you can basically look up your facts here. Let's take Memphis, Tennessee, which has a higher crime rate than Washington, D.C., and we all know Tennessee is a red state. Their crime is higher than Washington, D.C. And, of course, the report asked Trump, that, would you send the National Guard to, say, Memphis, perhaps, a blue state, to help out with their crime? And he, of course, well, I suppose I could if they asked me to, but, they haven't asked me, so, yeah, I'd probably do that if they really wanted to. But, Governor Lee's not going to ask Trump to send the National Guard to Memphis, because that's, not in the realm of how you want to do things. All right, we're going to go back to Susan Marantz for just a second here. Fired CDC chief Susan Marantz, she does refuse to step down, defying White House what they want her to do is to quit. She says only Trump can remove her, as 4 other senior CDC leaders quit over the political interference. Now, I mentioned this earlier that, there has been a max exodus from the CDC since, Kennedy fired her. And now we're into a huge standoff because her lawyers are claiming she will not depart unless the president himself removes her. And, of course, I think he is going to probably wind up doing that. Now, she is an expert in her field. What's going on here with Susan Marantz basically, leaving is the fact of the matter is Kennedy does not believe in science. He believes in conspiracy theories. But, Marantz has been there quite a while, and she knows how to do her job. And the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is all based on science, and it has been effective. But Kennedy, with his conspiracy theories, a lot of things that he says that she has done just doesn't fit into what we need to do here. Now, her lawyers claim that while the White House has said that she is not aligned with the president's agenda, whatever that may be, only Donald Trump himself can dismiss her, and he's going to probably do it. And Kennedy can't, but the president probably can. So he'll do that. If she's trying to stay on the job, and she has been reported to work, although, as I mentioned to you, that we have Jim O'Neill, who has been put in her place. So you got 2 people coming to work. So I had to bring that up because this woman is just being butchered and run over the rails, and a lot of this stuff is happening. So, Trump, moving on with other news, he's also ready to move the National Guard in Chicago, which will probably happen this next Friday of this podcast, over the objection of the Illinois governor. He's ready to move in with that stuff, and that's going to be interesting to see, too, because the governor of Illinois is fighting just like the governor of California over these National Guard troops coming in. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens there. I want you to take a look at this. Now, this is wild. President Donald Trump is considering holding a Republican National Convention ahead of the midterm elections. He announced Thursday. Trump did not offer any details about where the convention would take place or what would happen there, but he touted various statistics that have been beneficial for the Republican Party this year. The GOP is fighting to maintain control, as we know well, of both the House and the Senate in 2026. The Republican Party is doing really well. Millions of people have joined us in our quest to make America great again. We won every aspect of the presidential election, and based on the great success we're having, are poised to win big in the midterms. I don't know about that. I think, in my personal opinion, that the House has a great possibility of being taken back control by the Democrats. The Democrats, I think, sadly don't have a chance in hell in the Senate. But the House, yeah. But again, this is why all this gerrymandering is going on, because the Republican Party is scared to death. And that's why they're doing all this. So now Trump wants to do this. Now, he says we have raised far more money than the Democrats. That is true, and are having a great time fixing all the country-destroying mistakes made by the Biden administration. And watching the USA heal and prosper. Prosper? I haven't seen that at the grocery market yet, that things are prospering. And it's at a record pace, he says. You know, Trump has these delusional things that he just loves to say. And I'm thinking of recommending a national convention to the Republican Party just prior to the midterms. He wants to do this because he wants to win a third term, which is illegal. The Constitution specifically states that a president shall not serve more than 2 terms. He doesn't care about the Constitution, though. This is Trumpism at its best. If I want to serve 3 terms, by God, I'll do it. Nobody's going to stop me. So, as you saw by that post, now, there are 4 key states the Republicans aim to flip in 2026 midterms to expand the majority. Historically, midterms have been tough for elections for the party controlling the White House, typically losing 25 seats in the House, and the Republicans lost 41 seats in the 2018 midterms. Republican National Committee RNC Chairman Christian Pelz, following Trump's announcements, told the media that it is leading in bold initiatives to win back the House and the Senate, and we're going to keep our pathway to victory. So I'm anxious to see how that goes down. I really, really am, because to have a midterm presidential party, whatever you want to call this thing, has never been done before. But Trump so far has reinvented everything in the government and has taken the Constitution and thrown it out with the bathwater. And of course, with the Supreme Court, with the majority of the Supreme Court being placed there by Republicans, so far the Supreme Court has pretty much 99.9% have done whatever Trump wants them to do. So when lawsuits get filed and it's taken to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court just says, well, he has the executive power to do all this stuff, what are you going to do? The United States is now under authoritarian control, and it's white privilege, and it's whatever what we want to do. The Republican Party is going to do it. So whether you like it or not, Trump's probably going to pull this off. And again, President Donald Trump, again, at both of his White House events this past Monday, mused about renaming the Department of Defense back to the Department of War. And he's been calling it the Department of War several times. Trump said in the Oval Office, as he met with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, he said that he thought he would be more information about changing it back to the Department of War because he thinks it sounds better. Now, the Department of War, before it was called the Department of Defense, was created in 1789, and it was reorganized and renamed after World War II back to the Department of Defense. So there you go. This stuff is just crazy. Yeah, I don't know. What are you going to do when you see stuff like that? It's Department of War, Department of Defense, call it whatever you want to call it. It's Trumpism at its best. Okay, now, what you're looking at here is Union Station. You think that's crazy? Well, the Department of Transportation said this past Wednesday is reclaiming the management of Union Station in Washington, D.C. to restore it. Though Union Station has previously been owned by the Department of Transportation, it has been under various agreements and leases. Last week, Vice President J.D. Vance, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller visited Union Station to meet with the troops, which are stationed there, and contended the station has been overrun with homeless people and trash. And because of that, they're going to take control of that too. Of course, the federal government's already pretty much taken control of Washington, D.C. Again, as you can see, the government does not like homeless people. To be homeless is an absolute crime. Whether you're out of a job, you have mental issues, whatever the case may be, alcoholism, you're addicted to drugs. If you're homeless, screw you. We're going to take you off the streets. You can't camp there. We want our country beautiful. And if you're homeless, you're just a worthless POS. And of course, they're saying they're rounding them up and putting them in great shelters, and they're putting them in institutions to get better. And I call BS on that. They're not. It's just like with the detainees. They're getting the best of treatment in these detention camps and these the people who are in these camps. And that's why they're closing Alcatraz, which I'll get to in a moment. Alligator Alcatraz. They're not getting the best treatment. That place is a sewer dump already. So anyway, moving on. The Federal Energy Management Agency, who signed a public letter of dissent earlier this week, were put on administrative leave evening, according to documents reviewed by the Associated Press. More than 180 current and former FEMA employees signed the letter sent to the FEMA Review Council and Congress on Monday, critiquing recent cuts to the agency staff and programs and warning that FEMA's capacity to respond to a major disaster was dangerously diminished. Well, I can see why they put $445 million in the Alligator Alcatraz, FEMA did. So that money that was supposed to be used there for assisting states with major national disasters, it was put in Alligator Alcatraz, a lot of it. So 35 signed their names, while 141 signed anonymously for fear of reputation, a fear of being, punished. I can't talk today, folks. It's Saturday. So this was found out by the Associated Press. And so what did they do with the FEMA heads? Basically, they're going to fire these people for speaking out like this. Trump does not like anything internally being given out to the media. He wants to put everything behind closed doors. So they still got to check in every morning and to confirm their availability. It was unclear what the status was for the other people who signed the documents that wanted to keep their name out of it. The notice said that the decision is not a disciplinary action, is not intended to be punitive. But they also refused to answer any more questions about it. So it's no secret. FEMA is a mess. People complained about, when Bush was the president and how FEMA responded to the disaster in Louisiana after the hurricane there. And you think it's bad now. Trump basically now decides who's going to get any kind of FEMA aid at all for what little money there's left there. And who is it? If you are a red state, you're probably more than likely going to get help from FEMA, such as, say, Tennessee if they had a tornado disaster. If you're Illinois, which is pretty much a blue state, and of course they already tried to get help from some things that happened there, and they were denied it. And there's actually been a couple of red states that was denied FEMA any kind of assistance. And this is basically because there's hardly any money left in FEMA. So that's basically why. And here's something else that's crazy in the news, ladies and gentlemen. What has Denmark accused the United States of? Denmark summoned Mark Straw, the U.S. who is charged in Denmark, after the Danish public broadcaster DR reported on Wednesday that at least 3 Americans with links to Donald Trump have been carrying out covert operations that sought to encourage Greenland to break away from Denmark and instead join the United States. DR Broadcasting cited unnamed sources. Greenland, which is situated between the Arctic Ocean and the North Atlantic Ocean, is the world's largest island and is geographically part of North America. The 3 American individuals who DR reported were being closely watched by Danish authorities were not named by the broadcaster. Their alleged activities include compiling a list of Greenlanders who would support Donald Trump and gathering information about tensions between Denmark and Greenland. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said any interference in internal affairs in the Kingdom of Denmark and Greenlandic democracy is unacceptable. I note that the Americans have not clearly rejected the DR report today, and that is, of course, serious. Bergmanson told this with Danish television. So, as you know, J.D. Vance visited Denmark, and basically he also visited Greenland, and he was trying to, tell the people there that hey, you should support the United States, and I think we can get this island to become a part of the United States, and it'll be good for everybody. Trump wants Canada to become the United States. He wants Greenland to become the United States, and he wants, of course, Denmark wants nothing to do with it, and Canada wants nothing to do with it. So, again, this is just another one of his fantasies where, if he thinks that if I want something, I'm going to take it. Again, this is what Hitler did in 1939 Nazi Germany. He tried to take all of Europe, and look what happened to him. So, we need to work with these countries, folks, like Greenland and Canada. And right now with Canada, we've got all these huge tariffs coming back on the citizens of the United States because Trump is putting tariffs on Canada. And it's backfiring. But, oh boy. Moving on, National Guard troops that President Donald Trump ordered to Washington, D.C. have been spotted picking up trash. You see this video going on here? After Trump slashed the federal workforce, the troops whom Trump deployed after declaring a crime emergency in the Capitol were seen wearing yellow gloves and orange vests over their camouflaged uniforms in Lafayette Park across from the White House on this past Tuesday. They're become trash, picker-uppers. And that's because there's nobody to pick up the trash. The Park Service has been slashed with the number of people that work there. And the other people that are, common laborers are for the city of Washington, D.C., they've been cut. So what are you going to do? You're going to have the National Guards go around picking up trash. Officials say the troops were also collecting trash in the Tidal Basin area and the National Mall. They're picking up trash. Much of the work being carried out by the guards would normally fall under the remit of the National Park Service, but they don't have anybody working for them anymore. And I'm going to tell you right now, as I said, I'm originally from Wyoming, and I've been following the local news up there in the Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Park areas, and their lack of service there, with having no staff is very much visible. Things that services that have normally been available to the visitors to the national parks is not there anymore. And you've got people who are in high-level management areas in the national parks now cleaning toilets and doing everything else because and cleaning up campgrounds because there's nobody to do it. The staff was struggling before the Trump administration came into power. Now it's even worse. And these sweeping cuts that has been happening to the federal workforce is now becoming evident. When you've got people like the National Guard now have to resort to picking up trash when they're supposed to be there for other reasons, that kind of shows you the severity of things going on. It's kind of sad, but Trump says that he's putting the Guard on duty for 40 beautification projects around the city. So this is just beginning of what the National Guard's doing. He's just, it's free help for him. I'm going to deploy the National Guard, and then they're going to go out and do this, and they're going to do what I tell them because they are part of the United States Army. So, I don't know. The Park Service had 200 people one time working in the gardens in the area of the White House, and now they got 20. They went from 200 to 20 people. And I mean, it's everybody. The masons, the maintenance workers, the groundskeepers, the plumbers, they don't have anybody anymore. Every shop is short, they said, and it reported that the guards are being used to pick up the slack. So the National Guard are now going to be doing that kind of stuff. The National Park Service has lost almost a quarter of its permanent staffing during Trump's second term, according to the nonprofit National Parks Conservation Association. While it's not unusual for troops to be involved in cleanup of a major emergency, such as a hurricane or civil unrest or natural disasters, they're used as gardeners now. They're planting flowers. In the wake of the presidential directive has raised questions about whether it's an effective use of the resources. So there you go. The National Guard is now having to go around picking up trash. Now, maybe you think this is okay, but I want you to think about this for just a second. If you joined the National Guard as your way of serving our country, and you expected to be doing more than coming into U.S. cities armed and having been ordered to, perhaps use your force to take out people who are protesting or homeless people or, arresting migrants who happen to be in the country. If you're asking yourself, did I join the National Guard for this? Because I know some National Guard people, because I got a relative who's in the National Guard. She got shipped overseas, and she enjoyed her service over there. She was sent as support services, and she's serving the military, doing stuff. Now, if she turns around and has to get sent to, say, Chicago here in the next few days, and having to bear her weapons and march the streets because they think they got rabid crime going on there, she may have a different tune. But I'm just telling you that this kind of stuff, makes people nervous. So, I don't know. So we are going to now move on to our things with going on here in Florida. And we're going to go back to Alligator Alcatraz, which is in the news. 5 of the contractors Florida has employed to build and operate Alligator Alcatraz, the controversial immigration detention site in the Everglades, have links to allegations of improper business practices and misuse of public funds. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Yes. Now, according to the Miami Herald, a review of legal records that they found, one of the firms allegedly allowed armed Mexican nationals with no legal immigration status to be brought into the United States by a subcontractor to provide security for its work in building a border wall as part of a federal contract. Another recently agreed to a multi-million-dollar settlement addressing allegations that it had sold to the United States. Federal government products made in prohibited countries like China. A third shares top executives with 2 businesses that were accused by ex-employees of filing inflated hurricane insurance claims in federally declared disaster areas. The findings raise questions about the DeSantis administration's vetting of companies that received Alligator Alcatraz contracts, all of which were granted under the terms of emergency order Governor Ron DeSantis first issued in 2023, declaring an illegal immigration emergency. The order grants the state executive sweeping powers to suspend any regulation or rule that may slow down response to an emergency, including the process of awarding contracts. The DeSantis administration described the process for soliciting contractors in general, but did not answer any questions when asked whether these same contractors would be tasked with operating Deportation Depot, which is, of course, being built on the other side of Jacksonville, in North Florida. That's where that's being built. Now, here's where I'm going to kind of, really get into some details here. And this is part of my top story from my podcast. You got to listen closely about this investigation because it is dead serious. Now, even though I'm talking about the state of Florida where I do my podcast from, this is important because we are taxpayers. And you nationally are taxpayers because you contribute to FEMA. So here we go. Florida taxpayers could be on the hook for $218 million the state has spent to convert a remote training airport in the Everglades into Alligator Alcatraz. I want to repeat that figure again because they are closing it. $218 $15 million. Because, this judge, she said on late Wednesday that it was going to be wound down indefinitely because it violated every, environmental guidelines that you could think of. Plus, it has already flooded several times, and we haven't even had a hurricane go through there yet. So you can see what the problem is. So it's going to cost the state $15 million to $20 million immediately on top of the figure I just said. And it would cost another $15 million to $20 million to reinstall structures if Florida is allowed to reopen it. Of course, they're going to fight this. And I'm beginning to wonder if DeSantis was really wondering if this is all worth it. So the Florida Division of Emergency Management will lose most of the value of the $218 million that is already invested in making the airport suitable for a detention center, a state official said in court papers. Florida signed at least $405 million in vendor contracts, which are all, highly inflated. And this thing was built in 4 days. So the facility consists of a chain-link cages surrounding large white tents filled with rows of bunk beds. And an analysis by the Associated Press of public available state spending data showed that Florida has signed at least $405 million in vendor contracts, which, as you already saw by the report by the Miami Herald, those contracts a lot of them are illegally, and people are just making out like bandits on them, and there's no oversight on them. So, this was done to build the facility, and there's illegal aliens actually working as guards, guarding their own. Oh my God! So, as of late July, the state had already allocated at least $245 million to run the site, which opened July 1st. President Donald Trump toured the facility, last month and suggested it would be a model for future lockups nationwide, as his administration races to expand the infrastructure needed to increase deportations, thus private third-party jails and detention centers, which corporations make millions of dollars off of, and they're all Trump's buddies. He's spreading the wealth. So, it's just it's absolutely crazy, folks, that's going on with Alligator Alcatraz, and all the millions and millions of dollars that are being spent. The Republican Party is just handing out money left and right to anybody and everybody that can help in their cause. So it's a get-rich scheme for everybody, and this is actually no secret. Again, you got to stop and think about what Ron DeSantis is doing here. He's already being investigated for, allocating $10 million to his wife's nonprofit organization, Hope Florida. He's already gone after Orange County, which is mostly Democratic. He's now got his people in there in Orange County, his own little Doge operation. In the city of Orlando, investigating some what is supposed to be alleged, I use that word alleged, misspending from one of the tourist bureaus there. So, he's just like a mini Trump. You cross him, he's going to come after you. And again, he's really defending Alligator Alcatraz, that it was actually really needed, and that we have to keep it there, even though judges order it closed. So, interesting stuff, huh? And in my final story for today from the state of Florida, in May, 2 Lake Nona fourth graders won a Florida Department of Transportation art contest. You're looking at it here. Their prize, to see their designs painted on bike lanes outside of their school. The colorful images, sadly, have a short shelf life. This week, Laureate Park Elementary School learned that the state of Florida, going back to Ron DeSantis and his cronies, have ordered the youngsters' street art painted over, part of a wide-ranging effort to remove pavement art and other roadway markings that Florida officials say now are unsafe and they are political. The state's new push led to the painting over of the rainbow crosswalks, as I reported on my last podcast last week from the former Pulse nightclub in Orlando, and has put about 400 more road art projects around the state of Florida on a potential removal list. The Lake Nona Kid designed bike lanes are among 18 in the city of Orlando required to be removed by next week. Again, DeSantis is going after the city of Orlando, one of the largest Democratic strongholds in the state of Florida. He does not like it, and he is throwing his weight around to get rid of anything and everything. Okay. When this came up, I said, "Are we sure this is on the list?" It said Jim Gray, the Orlando City Commissioner who represents the Lake Nona area. And the answer to that question was yes, it is. So there you go. My podcast for this week. As you have just seen and learned, there is a lot of stuff going on. And whether you're pro or con, I just report the facts. And a lot of this stuff, folks, is freaking scary. And a lot of this stuff is sad because it affects children, just as you've seen in this report. That bike lane and that artwork is hurting absolutely nobody. And kids take a lot of pride in the stuff that they do. The rainbow sidewalk that was there for us, talking about the 49 people that died in the Pulse shooting mass. That was one of the worst things that's happened in U.S., in the state of Florida's history and even the U.S. That rainbow sidewalk was hurting nobody. And DeSantis had that thing painted over. And when people went in there with colored chalk to try to restore it, they did it again, and then they sent law enforcement after them. This stuff is hurting nobody. It's just this thing going on with, with the culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. The Republicans do not like it. They do not like the LGBT community. They do not like Hispanics. They do not like homeless people. They do not like anyone unless you are white, privileged, and can contribute to the economic status of this country. They love you if you can do that. If you're a senior, they don't like you. You've got to be active. You've got to be well educated. And you got to make money. Then you're fine. So, it's just anything that has anything to do with the Biden administration. The Republicans just are bitter, hateful people, and I'm going to come out and say it because it's true. And they can talk all about, it's basically our way or the highway. That's what they're saying. And going back to this little art project that these kids did, that was a beautiful piece of artwork. Who the hell are they hurting there? And, guys, I'm going to just say it, you got to grow up. I mean, it's so sad. Anyway, that's my podcast for this week on The Right Has Left. I'm Roy Garten. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I look forward to your comments. Until next time, you try to have a good one.